Welcome back. So, we are now on to our second session of Data Architecture Day. Andy Leonard, who has been furiously working on trying to get all the demos back alive, but it's looking good. So, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And first, I want to thank you and your team for putting together Data Architecture Day 2020. I'd also like to throw a shout out. I don't remember who swapped with me. Someone in Europe swapped with me. I was scheduled for later in the day, and I promise you, I'm a morning person. I mean, I just get uglier as the day goes along. Thanks for that. Thank you, Kevin, for coordinating all of that. This is just awesome, and I love all of these neat virtual conferences that we're having, especially the free ones. And so today, I'm going to talk about Azure DevOps and how that interacts with SSIS. Here's a little bit about me. Really, I talk about myself too much. Just go to Biml. Ed Watson says that's your favorite search engine, Biml. I love that. And type in Andy Leonard in data. It should find me. There's actually another Andy Leonard out in the Seattle area who's like a Unix sysadmin. And he's the one who has andyleonard.com. Darn it. It's okay. But lots of interesting stuff there about me, but not really. So enough of that. Let's talk a little bit about CI/CD and what we mean when we use those acronyms. So we're going to do a little bit about that. We're going to talk about a little source control, and we're just going to kind of walk this through source control from the beginning. And one of the things that, this has been on my mind for a while, because I was an MCSD back before .NET. I worked in BASIC and then Visual Basic. And then does anybody remember Visual InterDev? I'm pretty sure that's the first program I saw, the first IDE that looked like what Visual Studio was going to look like. Pardon me. So yeah, we did ASP, not X, ASP with InterDev. Back in the old days when William Durkin says we couldn't afford one, so we used lowercase L's. I say we carved our own chips out of wood. But at the PASS Summit 2007, I almost said 2017, it was in Denver. This is pardon me, this is a slide, and I'm not any better at slides, I'm sad to say. This is what I had running there. I took a network with me because I was running Orcus Beta 2 of TFS, and I was using this with SSIS. So it's been this dream of mine to be as cool as Kevin Feasel. That's the best way to say it in this session, because Kevin is a serious developer, and he does all sorts of these really cool, shiny new languages that I can't keep up with. But he checks in his code, and when he does that, it fires off this automated build. And then that fires off, if it succeeds, that fires off a deployment to a test server. And then if that succeeds, it starts running some tests. And at the end of this, Kevin gets this really cool looking screen that comes back to him and says, these tests failed and these succeeded. And, kind of gives him that. I want to be like Kevin. By the way, if you want to be like someone, Kevin Feasel's a fine example. I'm just saying. And I want to be like Kevin Feasel. So what I want to be able to do is exactly what the cool kids do. I want to be able to do this continuous integration, continuous delivery, but I want to do it with SSIS. So I've heard continuous delivery called continuous deployment too. I don't know if I'm just missing something or what, but the idea is you check in your code pretty frequently. And as you do that, it does exactly what I described with Kevin's code. It does, software merges or what have you. And you may do this even several times a day. Continuous delivery is that deployment. So Azure's doing this, by the way. If you haven't noticed, if you've been out to Azure for any amount of time, you've seen stuff change, or you've done like me, because I'm kind of old. And you look at it and you go, was that there before? And it was I forget when it was, a few weeks ago, I built, or maybe a couple of months, I built a new Azure Data Factory for the first time in a long time. And I was like, they changed the colors. So that happens to me all the time. And this is, like I said, the cool people like Kevin who are checking in their code and it's just automatically building and running these tests. That's because a lot of these lifecycle management tools and the philosophies behind them were built for these stateless applications. And if you think about anything that touches data, especially a database, by definition, it's very stateful. And so SSIS kind of sits in the middle. I'd say if I have to choose whether SSIS is data or software development, there's my quote I've been saying for years now: SSIS is software development. So these software development best practices should apply. But it turns out that we've just recently gotten some more of the tools to help us with this. So just going to walk through some screenshots here. I'm not going to walk through a live demo. There's a couple of live demos here. And hopefully the last one will be working by the time we get to it. I tried about 8 minutes ago, Kevin, to fire that up. So we're going to talk about connecting to Azure DevOps and some stuff you need to go through. I'm going to take it from the top, and then creating and configuring a project inside of there. They used to call those team projects when it was just Visual Studio. VisualStudio.com or Team Foundation out there. But now, they call them just projects. We're going to configure Visual Studio and then add our Project 2 source control, which I was just battling again about 9 minutes ago. So CI/CD and Azure DevOps, I've got an account out there. You can see my company is Enterprise Data and Analytics, and we abbreviate a lot of things, ENTDNA. That's our URL, entdna.com. And this project is called SSIS Samples. And I've got a note down here. You can go get this code. I bet you can't. And I promise you, I didn't change anything. It was working, but it stopped a while ago. And I think part of the answer is you need to already have an Azure DevOps account. You can go to dev.azure.com and sign up. But I don't think that's the whole answer. And although this is public, you can mark them private or public, people are still having trouble getting to this. So this is something I'm working on because Azure changed on me. I'm not making that up. So this is a project that I've created. You would create a new project by clicking that new project button, and we'll walk through that. When you first go to Azure to sign up, and this screenshot is probably, I don't know, last fall, and you can sign up there at dev.azure.com. There's always some kind of thing going on where there's a free offering. And I'm pretty sure it's always been, you can use Azure DevOps for free. You don't get all of the functionality, but you do get, I believe you get pipelines, and I know you get source control, and you can get basically project management out there, but it's even better. 5 of you can share that for free. And then after that, I think it's something like $6 a month per user, greater than that. But 5 developers can do an awful lot of cool things. You get us together. But there's that, and it's kind of the same way like in Azure.com. There's always some kind of free kickoff thing going, but this stays free as far as I know for a while. Here's my organization, ENTDNA, and I can click on a new project. When I do that, it pops up this blade, kind of slides out, and says, what do you want to call it? I wanted to call this one SSIS Samples. I did public, and down here under advanced, I set Team Foundation, version control, and Scrum. Now, I know Kevin's cringing, but I'll get to it. Hang on, Kevin. Once I've created this, this is what the project looks like, and it's done. And this is why Kevin's cringing. He's going, why are you doing Team Foundation, Andy? What's up? You know enough about Git to do it. And this is a true and valid concern. Everybody's using Git. Well, that's not entirely accurate, to quote the secretary on the original Independence Day movie. Some large enterprises that I get calls from are using TFS on premises still. And part of one thing that I wanted to point out in this presentation is that there's a path from where you are on premises using TFS to using Team Foundation version control in Azure DevOps. It's tricky, and it's laden with these pits that are covered with leaves and filled with spikes. That's true, but it can be done. You can lift and shift what you've got inside of on-premises TFS into the cloud. And I just wanted to make you aware that option still exists, and it's out there in Azure DevOps. Once you've got your team or your project, I keep saying team project. Once you've got your project set up, Azure DevOps Project, you need to configure Visual Studio so it'll work with it. And I'm pretty sure this is a screenshot from Visual Studio 2017 because that does not look like the 2019 logo. I'm going to update this. Long story as to why, but something bad happened, and I'm going to take advantage of it and use it to motivate me to put time in and upgrade this to Visual Studio 2019. You click on Tools Options, you click on Source Control, and then you can pick your current source control plugin. You got two options built in there, Visual Studio Team Foundation and then Git. So once you've done that, from the Visual Studio menu, you can go to Team, the Team dropdown, and click Manage Connections. And the reason is it's going to configure Team Explorer to work with Team Foundation. And you want it to do that. You can flip back and forth, and actually the settings per project are stored, I believe, in the solution file. It's either the solution or the project file, but you can open one and then open the other. And once you've got it configured, it'll just come up with whatever version control you've set for it. And I do both. I actually blog about both out of my blog, andyleonard.blog. I click Connections, Connect to a Project, and here I am hooking into this SSIS Samples project that I just created out there. And once it's finished connecting, it brings me to the Team Foundation version of Team Explorer. And the Git one looks completely different. And actually, there's a few differences in the workflow and how you would manage even this part, setting things up. Just a quick note, what I did was I created the project first out there in DevOps. I then, beside this, I created a test SSIS solution that you're going to see in a minute. And then I added the solution from Visual Studio to the Azure DevOps team. I would not do it that way in Git. So I'd create the Git repository out in Azure DevOps, and I clone that locally. And again, there's a number of ways to do both of these, but I clone it locally and I get an empty directory. Then I go to Visual Studio and I begin coding and building that solution in a subdirectory of that Git project directory. So again, just a touch of difference between the way you approach getting started. And so this is my Test SSIS solution. It contains a project called Test SSIS Project. I was feeling very creative when I built these. Got a few packages in there. The one we're going to be focusing on is that one at the bottom, write a record and succeed. Because it writes a record, it's testable. And I've got a very manual test here. And I do need to share with you, it's a little bit, the way I use the pipelines here is not the way you would build this all the way out. So this solution, if you haven't, this presentation, if you haven't figured it out already, is for people just getting into this, right? I just walked you through how to sign up for an account. So I'm not going to take you all the way to the end of this. I'm going to take you about halfway. And I'm going to, in the middle here, I'm going to do some things in a build pipeline that I should be using other types of pipelines for instance, like release and testing. But if I can get you here, then you'll see the benefits of this, I believe, and you'll be motivated then to hopefully to move forward with this. Here I'm adding my solution in Visual Studio. I've got the solution already exists. I'm going to add it to source control. I'm going to put it into that SSIS Samples project. And, here I am in the SSIS Samples project. And I'm going to make a new folder down here. When I type the name of it, it's actually going to create it. And once I'm done with that, then Solution Explorer looks like this. I have these little pluses hanging out here. This means that we see that you intend to check this code in, but it's not checked in yet. So in Team Foundation, it gets added to source control, and then it gets checked in. In Git, you commit and then you push. It's very similar. In operation, they work differently under the hood. And now it's time to do a check-in. I right-click and click check-in here, and I can do that at the solution or the project level as I've got here. When I click check-in, I put in a message here. By the way, do put in code comments when you do a check-in. Either future you will appreciate it, or you'll. I don't like to be negative and say what happens if you get hit by a truck. I want to be positive and say what happens if you win the lottery. So if you win the lottery, because I know I'd still do this if I won the lottery. I'm that type of person. But that way about 2 miles is one of the best largemouth bass fishing lakes in Southern Virginia. And those fish need to catch it. I'm just saying. So do a code comment so that you can at least look back through the history and see what you were doing, see at least what you were thinking when you check this in. Also, you can take vacations. Crazy. Once it's checked in, you get these locks, and they'll show you, the state of this is currently checked in. So just want to pop over to my VM for a minute and show you the code repository here. I've got a bunch of stuff running, and here it is. This is the project SSIS samples, and I'm on the overview page right now. You can see the summary. I don't have any dashboards. I don't have a wiki set up for this yet. So this is brand new, for all intents and purposes. It still has that new project smell. But if I go to repos here, this is where I'm going to see my files. And you saw a screenshot of this, of a version of this. But if I expand test SSIS solution, there's the SLN file. If I expand the project and even click on it, there's the project pieces that I want. So just so you know, there's this is great. It works a lot like any other kind of source control in that the files live somewhere else in case you do something dumb like delete a very important file for your VM, hypothetically. I'm just saying. It could happen. So that's really all that's in there. Not much of a demo for that. But next, it starts to get fun. This is where things get super exciting, in my humble opinion. We're going to talk about agents. And Azure DevOps agents give you a couple of options. So you see that first bullet there is self-hosted, and we're going to talk about that. But all the articles I read when I was setting this up about a year ago, starting to work with this, they were saying you should use the Windows agents or the Azure agents. And I tried them, and it would be like 8 or 12 minutes before something would start. And I was like, that's insane. I'm going to try the other one. And it starts in like 3 seconds. So I don't know. Self-hosted works better for me. And I got a lot of feedback from some people who are doing this already. And it's gotten way easier than it was. They were literally carving their own chips out of wood when they were working with this a couple years ago. But this self-hosted agent was recommended to me by a couple of people who mentored me on that. Patrick Hutcherson is one of them, and I can't thank him enough. He helped me a great deal. So as we move through this, and there's some other bullets there that I'm just going to keep going. There's a great article out there. By the way, if you want the slides for this, I'll send them to Kevin. They've got these links in them, and you can you can hit these links. And I'm sure this has changed since last August, but this was the latest screenshot I got of this. This is what I used to walk through the self-hosted Windows agent stuff. And I was really impressed with it. At that time in August, and I'll bet they fixed it, they didn't tell you the right way to navigate to the personal access token screen. So I mentioned that only because, it threw me. So if you click, there's a header over here to the upper right, and we can see that when we go back into the demo, and there's this little people settings, user settings here. That's where personal access tokens are. So you can certainly do that, use that to get there. You click a new token after you click on it, a new blade comes out. In that post, it tells you, or in that article, it tells you there's a couple of permissions you need to add here. They're not all on the screen. I can promise you that. I need a better screenshot of that, and I know better. Once you've done that, you can go into organization settings and look at the agent pools. These aren't like swimming pools where the agents are hanging out, sipping an umbrella drink. No, this is the agent pools that are going to be managed from Azure DevOps up in the cloud. But because we're going to be doing a self-hosted agent, it's going to be talking to my VM, actually. The agent will be executing on my VM, so all of the work gets done down here with me. If you can do this, you can see you can do Azure pipelines there. That's one of the agent pools that you have available. That's for doing Azure hosted agents. The default is the one that you can set up for running self-hosted agents like I'm about to do. Once you've configured that, you'll see a screen where you can go click the new agent button. And this is awesome. I don't know who came up with this idea at Microsoft, but this is just, it just kicks butt. You click the download button, and once the download completes, you copy and paste this PowerShell, these PowerShell statements into a ISE. I had trouble making this work in the ISE. I was doing it with just a command prompt, and then you run the config command. What this does, by the way, is it unpacks it and it sends it to makes a directory named agent on a C drive. It changes to that, and then this unpacks that zip file, and it's got the name of the file in your downloads, vsts-agent-win, ... It's got that name of the one you just downloaded. This changes, and then you configure it, and then you run it. So one thing that I didn't mention about those personal access tokens, I didn't show you the screen when you configure those, but once you're actually, I don't think I've hit that slide yet for personal access tokens, but I do want to share with you, you're going to need the personal access token to run the config.command. And when you go there now, I didn't do this before, when you go there now and it creates that personal access token for you, it's just a long string, not so long. When you get that, there's a note that comes up that says, save this somewhere right now, because you're not going to ever be able to get to this again. And that's the Andy paraphrase of what it actually says. But that's awesome there. Like I said, I was going into the command prompt in PowerShell, and when I ran config, it said, enter the server. I entered my server, my URL there for ENTDNA's organization in dev.azure.com, Azure DevOps. And of course, you can see that personal access token on the second line. It's asking me to do it. I could have just pressed enter, but I typed out Pat. Then I pasted my personal access token there. It goes and does a connection to the server, and it sets up the agent pool and the agent name. Now, this screenshot, I was actually setting it up on my host machine, which is a Lenovo P51S. So it's named Mustang. You can see it there. After that, it starts scanning for some capabilities, and it connects to the server and runs a quick test. Then it asks you for some more configuration. It needs a work folder. It wants to know, do you want to just have this turn on every time you turn on your machine? And I answered no for that. I could also configure auto log on and run it as a service based or like a service. And I didn't want to do that either, but those are all options that are out there. I want this to run on command, and that's what I do here. If you run the run command here, it'll just pick up and start, and you'll know it's ready when it gives you that date timestamp, and it tells you it's listening for jobs. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now on my on my machine here. I'm going to actually pop open command prompt and zoom in here so you can see it while I work. I love this zoom it option where I can show you what I'm doing. And if I just type run and hit enter, it does exactly what I was telling you it did a minute ago. It's scanning for the tools, it connects, and now it's listening. So what is it listening for? Well, one of the things that it listens for is pipelines, Azure pipelines. And we're going to talk about pipelines coming up next. I would like to just share, I was scrambling because I had an unfortunate incident with my demo VM. And I didn't realize that this wasn't set up before my last backup. Fortunately, my last backup was 6 months old. Unfortunately, I'd totally forgotten about it. So I fixed that. I'm now backing up weekly. But this was not here. And Kevin is my witness. And also, if you heard Neil Hambley talk, he was the presenter before me here. Neil's awesome, by the way. And we were chatting in between, and they were watching me rebuild these pieces. I couldn't believe it worked, and I'm still not convinced it does. So if we see something go hinky at the very end, we'll know it was me. One of the other things that we can do here, let me just zoom back in. I showed you the screenshot of that. If you do Control-C, you can terminate the job. And if I showed you screenshots of config. I had to do this again. I'm going to exit out of this. I love that. But it's telling me that it's an error now because I need to reconfigure it and do this. But again, this was broken. The agent that was on here was not working anymore. And so I re-downloaded and I ran config earlier. And what it did was it asked me in that process, do you want to replace your existing agent? And I absolutely did, because what I'm trying to do is preserve all of the things I've got configured to my existing agent. So pretty cool that it does that. I'm going to go back and run this and leave it running. We'll come back to that in just a bit. So you get a little bit extra in this presentation that others didn't because of my fat delete finger. The next piece is we're going to talk about these pipelines and how they work and what they do. So you can create a build pipeline, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to configure a couple of variables, actually just one. And I say add and configure the new build and deploy SSIS tasks. They were new when I did this originally at the PASS Summit. They actually weren't out yet back in November, but they're out now. And if you go looking in the marketplace, you'll find other people have built their own build and deploy SSIS tasks because they didn't exist before. You can't really fault them. The Azure SSIS team over in Shanghai actually developed these, and I think they did a fantastic job. It really simplifies a lot of the pieces and parts here. But could you execute builds before this? Yeah, you could always you kind of your get out of jail free card in in anything Azure. If you've got an execution engine, and you do, these pipelines do tasks. One of the options is Azure PowerShell. You could always fall back to Azure PowerShell and do this. So, there's and that's not the only way to do it, but that probably most of you know PowerShell more than know the other ways to do it. When I'm configuring a pipeline, and I've already done this, so I've just got some screenshots to show you how. I go to that pipelines page there on the left menu, and then I click new, and I click a new build pipeline. The build pipelines aren't the only ones that are available. For instance, there's a release pipeline as well. Note you can also import a pipeline if you've already got one somewhere else. And at the time I did this, and this I'm almost positive has changed in the past year or so, that you would pick where's your code, team foundation, version control is where my code lives, and my source is TFVC, and then it wants my server path, and where is this code, where's the project, so it can find the build file, which is I can't remember if it's a solution or the project. I think it's a project file that actually doubles as the build file, but I could be wrong about that. It could be solution. But once I'd done that, it prompted me to select a template, as you see over on the right. And I picked empty job and built this from scratch. So I had to pick, my Azure hosted or my private self-hosted agent pool. I chose default, which is my self-hosted. And then once I had this pipeline, I didn't have any tasks on it yet. I clicked on the variables page there, the tab, if you will, and I added pwd var. This is a password marked sensitive, so you can't read it there. I'm going to use that later. And then, I turned on system debug and set it to false for now. If you turn debug on, system.debug to true, you'll see these little windows that we'll see in just a minute that are running inside of the an instance of a pipeline execution. And they look very, very console-like. That system debug is going to put about 90% of the messages in there. So you're going to see about 9 times as much as we're going to see. A lot of purple text in there, purple or magenta. When I was a kid, we couldn't afford more than the 8 crayon set of Crayola. So I didn't learn colors like magenta until I got much older. But you'll see that it's great for troubleshooting. It is a very much a step-by-step feedback. Walk through, and you can grab that list and pull it out of there and parse through it and find out where it actually failed. And these days, there's a lot of information available about these pipeline failures online. People have blogged about it, and you can find the error and find suggestions for how to fix it. Stack Overflow has a bunch of them as well. Once we're done there, I'm going to give the agent a name. I didn't leave them named my agent name, I promise. But I'm adding an agent. Once I've added my agent name, then I can begin to add tasks to it by clicking this plus here. And when I click that, I can then I get access to all of the tasks that I have installed, the native set of tasks that come just as a default, and that's growing all the time. Or I can search the marketplace for them. And in this case, I've already searched the marketplace and imported this SSIS build and SSIS deploy built by the team there over in Shanghai. And you just click the add button. It brings an instance of it in here. And, I've got it in there. And now I need to deploy it. I named it build SSIS. I think that was the default. I have to configure the path to the solution and this output path here. So anytime you see these like dollar signs, they're placeholders or markers for different stuff. So you see one here that's telling me like the home directory, and then looking at SSIS samples and test solution. $ parentheses telling me this is an artifact that's going to identify something in your environment. So by default, you have a build.artifact staging directory that's built in, and it's going to use that directory. It's going to look it up and replace the value for output path that's there. And we'll see this. If we have a little time, we'll poke around in the directories, the work directories on the local agents directory here. The next one is SSIS deploy. And here's that build artifact staging directory again. And it's going to be in test SSIS project / test SSIS project.ispack. An ispack file is a deployment file for SSIS projects. I'm going to send this to an SSIS DB. That's a catalog. And it wants to know, where do you want which catalog? Well, I've got a server out there called SVA demo. And I've mentioned several times that I delivered this first for the PASS Summit. So it's in that folder. I've actually got a folder in an SSIS catalog folder in the catalog named PASS Summit 2009. I want you to think of that as my test folder. And I'm going to use SQL Server authentication. And there's my my username is admin Andy. And then my password is secretly saved in that variable. If it exists, I'm going to overwrite it. If there's an error, I want you to stop right there. And that's part of my testing routine is I'm going to raise an error when things don't appear as I assert they should. So it's kind of a poor man's assert error. So what I can do here is I can, I've got my agent running and I can look at my pipelines here. Take a look. I've got a few of them in here. This one deploy to test failed a minute ago. I've got to edit it because, and let me zoom in, by the way. I need to edit it because it's configured right now for the next demo. Does that sound exciting? Did you get excited when I said the next demo? Didn't tell you what it was. You're going to see here, I kind of got to cheat. But just kind of walking through this build, again, that's showing what we have. What I didn't show was like output variables and control options. Those are in here as well. I didn't show any of that. The deploy has a lot more to it, and you can just see kind of walking through here all of the different options that we configured there. It's the same stuff that you saw, but again, some more stuff that I didn't share with. I'm not going to talk about these next two down here. We'll come to that in just a minute. I mentioned the variables first, and I showed you some. There's that PWD var and system debug, and the triggers is what I'm after here. So I'm going to go to trigger, and I've got this option I'm going to turn off, and then I'm actually going to do the save and queue. So I could just save it, save as draft, or save and queue. When I do this, it's like, what do you want to call this? And I'm going to call it, run one. I'm feeling very creative this morning. And when I click save and run, it gets everything set up and gets it ready to go. So a couple of things going on here. Let's zoom out just a minute. What we can see is it's running that job. See, deploy to test. That's happening on my local machine. But it's giving me these very command like feedback. Sorry about that. I had to mute my mic. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming in loud and clear.
Okay, I tried to mute again. I think I sneezed on you. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, not a good time to be sneezing on people. So it looks like we had an issue here. Initializing the AZ module failed. So not really sure what's happening with this, but I don't know if I'll be able to do the remainder of this job or not. We'll just have to see. The worst case is it'll fail again. But really, what my next demo is about is it's kind of a bonus here. So if we take a look, I want to be able to use those two tasks to do exactly what I said earlier. I want to be able to, on check-in, to execute a build, execute a deployment, then run a test execution. You see it ran a test execution just then on my test, but the test failed. I think I know why. I kind of hope I know why, but we'll find out. I type in demos, ladies and gentlemen, for better or worse. I type in demos. All right, let's walk through. We're going to look at adding a test SSIS execution. You can see it's already there, and we'll execute a test after that. Just a little bit about DILM, Data Integration Lifecycle Management, and I've got a address out there, DILMsuite.com, SUITE. And one of the things that we give away out there, we give most of the software is free, and some of the free stuff is open source. This framework, SSIS Framework Community Edition, is free and open source. And the way that I built it was I just went into the catalog and I right-clicked on a package and clicked Execute Package. Then I scripted what popped out of this. There's a long story about why I did all this, but the short version is if you're trying from an SSIS package to start another SSIS package, and if you're building this in what we call project deployment mode, it's the default since 2012 of how to build them. And that project deployment mode is what you would deploy to the catalog. You can't do it any other way. You have to have a project deployment module project if you're going to deploy it to the catalog. The problem is that I can use an execute package task to start any other package in that project, but I can't reach outside that project. And one of I got really excited when I saw this because look, here's the folder name, here's the project name, and here's the package name. And I said, if I could put a wrapper around this thing and it's pass those in, to a stored procedure, pass in package project and folder, I can run anything anywhere in this catalog. And that's exactly what I did in Framework CE. This is kind of the engine. It's called Execute Catalog Package. It's in a schema I created called Custom. If you're cringing about me creating a custom schema in a third-party database, you're right. I don't have time to tell you my reasons about it, but I have some. So we'll move forward. So here's me doing the that run, and that's what actually failed was the was I think that's actually what failed. It may have been something else, but we'll see here in just a minute. So again, these are just Azure PowerShell, and this is me doing my brute force PowerShell coding. If you're good at PowerShell, you can see that I'm working my way up to being a noob. I have some fantastic teachers though, and they're being very patient with me. But as you can see here, you can run an Azure this line right here. You can run an Azure Data Factory V2 pipeline. So that's what this does. And then I run a test. I run a SQL command, and I'm basically, here's the test. My record count, is it not equal to 1? There should be one and only one row in my target table that for my test results. It's actually in the test schema and it's named results. Again, lots of creativity there. But it's like Highlander, right? There can be only one. So once I've got this set up, I go back. I'm going to re-enable that continuous integration. And I've got two more pipelines configured that are going to, if that first one succeeds, and really my goal here is just when I check in this code, that enabled CI button is going to fire that pipeline. That makes me all giggly. The rest of it is just icing on the cake. But if it does work and it passes the test, if that first job runs, then it'll run a deploy to production pipeline, which will try to deploy that same project out to a production folder on the same catalog. And then we'll enable a deploy to production trigger. I'm not going to do it. Those last two bullets right there are already set up. and it should execute it basically in production and run the same test again. So let's just take a look at what I'm going to be doing. You already saw me disable this. So I'm just going to re-enable the deploy to test a continuous integration trigger. And when I do that, excuse me, it'll allow me to, when I check in code, it'll fire the pipeline. The second one is this other pipeline deployed to production. It's going to do some similar things, but notice in the build completion here under triggers, I added a triggering build, and I said, hey, if that deploy to test succeeds, then you start. So it waits. I'm kind of chaining them together here, and when I do that, I've got another one that triggers on the completion of that. All I should have to do is make a little change to it here, as you can see from the check-in comment. Well, let's go do that. Let's make that little change. So this was disabled, and if the truncate target table is disabled, then it'll add a new row, it'll write a new value, and there'll be more than one in there. Remember that not equals one is my test, right? So if I build that and save it, I'm just going to write here one little change. I do that because I don't know, have you ever said that as a developer? I'm just making one little change, it can't hurt anything. Yeah, that always bites me. I end up coming back later and going, that's bad. Now, this happens to me every single time I do this talk here. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close Visual Studio and then reopen it. And I think something's timed out or it's lost its connection, which I'm not unhappy about, even though it causes this to happen to me. And I'm kind of glad it does because I can show you everything's here. Everything shows right back out, including the one little change, and it's ready for the for the check-in here. So let's do that. And this time it should work. And this time it worked. I don't know. People who are smarter about DevOps than me probably know what just happened. But that's not where I want to go. I want to pop over here to my pipelines. And hopefully, dang it. I didn't enable this. Y'all said right there and watch me. All right, let's go to triggers. This is triggers for that deploy to test. Now I enable continuous deployment, and rather than save in queue, I'm just going to save it. All right, zoom out. Let's go back here, and I'm going to trick this into thinking I made a change. I'm just going to open this execute SQL task and click OK. It thinks I made a change, and my message here is going to be another little change. That's two little changes in once. Let's check it in and see what's going on. First, we'll go to the command prompt. We'll see if we pick up that job. That'd be a great clue to see it. Running job, deploy to test. Woohoo! Okay, so we're running, but if I go back over to Azure DevOps here and take a look at the pipeline, I'll see there's one running, and if I click on this and then click on the jobs itself, I get to see my screens here. Now I think this is where it failed last time, running the package. Yep. So it's not going to succeed. I actually know why that's happening, and I can fix it maybe in a few minutes. There was something else going on here with it that was giving me a little bit of a fit, and I'm right at the end of my my presentation, and I think I can fix this in 5 minutes. And I just want to share with you. I promise I'm not making this up. I learn an awful lot watching people troubleshoot, and I'm hoping that what I'm checking for here is I'm connected to the SVA demo server here, and I want to look at the SSIS DB database and see if it has some tables in the custom schema. And if it does, that's a good sign. The next thing I want to check is my SSIS application configured in here, because that's how I'm running it. And I want to be checking this out here. Let's see. I know I'll have framework tests. Okay, password pass summit 2019 test. Okay. Next, I want to do a check. I'm gonna run this and see what I get. And if this doesn't work, I'll double your money back, since this is a free presentation. application name equals, and let's get that. Let's see if that works. Because this is where it's returning a failure to me. It's on the step right here that runs this piece. We can also look at the report. We got a 1 back. That's positive. So something else is happening. There it is, write a record and succeed. So that worked. So something else is happening. It's probably in my run. It's giving me this error, and I don't know what this means. I'd have to troubleshoot this. But initializing AZ module failed. And I don't know why. But it could very well have something to do with the fact that my agent is one of the things I did I do that recently on here? I'm not sure. I may need to go to PowerShell and clobber the existing install of AZ here. And I know that would take more time than we have. So I'm just going to stop there. But that's what it feels like to me is if you're using, by the way, if you're using Azure RM, I blogged about this last year. They're telling you they're going to support Azure RM till December. And Microsoft has pushed deadlines back on a lot of stuff. They said we're going to end at the end of 2020. That this may be one of them. They want you to go to AZ, and it's really easy to switch. If you've got the commandlets all installed for Azure RM, they all start with, some verb dash and then Azure RM something. If you just delete URERM, the last part of Azure RM, and leave AZ there, I haven't yet run into a situation where it doesn't just work. They did a really good job making it compatible with that. But it may be that I don't have that current AZ module on here. And I'll bet you that is because this is a brand spanking new agent. I installed it at about 10 minutes before the presentation began. And I apologize again for doing demos on the fly like this. Again, I did it to myself, and it's my own fault. I own it. So if you want to send me nastygrams, my email's coming up, and you can do that and call me names. There's also a recording of this available over on my blog where things did work. So you could go there and watch that if you'd like. We've kind of covered all of the agenda that I wanted to, including my bonus that I threw into you at the very last minute. If you want to learn more about me, one place to go is my blog, andyleonard.blog. And if you go to /learn-more, there's some stuff in there about me. There's technical, a little bit of technical background in there, and there's some personal stuff in there as well. So, and if I can help you, I still do consulting personally. It's less frequent than it used to be. But I have a fantastic team working with me at Enterprise Data and Analytics, and they do most of the consulting work. And, when I do some consult, I still need to support my presenting and blogging habits. So, but here's my email address, andy.leonard@entdna.com. It is always an honor to present, and I would like to thank Kevin and others who helped with the Data Architecture Day, and I'm very honored to have been selected to speak, and I'm very appreciative they were able to move this in the morning because as many challenges as I hit today, it would have been worse if I'd done it later in the day. I'm old and I'm a morning person. Any questions or anything, Kevin?
So we do have a question. First question, hopefully not the last question. I noticed you were using Visual Studio 2017. Have you run across any issues using Visual Studio 2019 and TFS using all this work that you've showed?
Fantastic question. The answer is I have not tried it in 2019. I'm now highly motivated since I lost this VM and I had to roll back 6 months. I'm highly motivated now to use. I've got a machine named VDemo 20 or VDemo 19, and it's got Visual Studio 2019 on it. It's actually running on Windows Server 2019. This one is Windows Server 2016, and it's all it's all the latest stuff. And I've actually had that running for about a year. I want to say maybe, seems to me it hasn't been that long for some reason. I remember them releasing a Windows 10 and a Windows Server in 2019, and they rolled back the 2019. I think they did the same for 10, and then re-released it later. But I've not tried it. I do use Visual Studio 2019 and SSIS and Source Control. I've not tried it with the pipelines. So I've done everything except that last step with it. But if I was a betting man, I'd bet before the middle of June this presentation will all be running on 19. That's a great question. If the person who asked that question is still around, I'd ask back, have you tried it? And has it worked for you, or have you hit issues, or if you care to share? But yep, that's where I am right now with this.
All right, and Mark, if you have any thing to add to that, go for it. He is not.
Okay. All right. Good question. Yeah.
The next question is: any thoughts on Biml integration into this environment? Funny though, I ask you.
Yeah. I do have some thoughts on that. So when I'm thinking of, right now, when I do public talks about Biml, I am almost always using the free version, Biml Express. And there's a few limitations on objects, on things you can do there, but you could certainly do it. What Biml would do, even in the free version, is it would allow me to generate a number of SSIS packages that use the same pattern. The demo I always do is with staging, and I'll do an incremental load into staging. I'll pull from another database and into there, and I'll build like 4 packages in about, I don't know, 8 seconds or something. That's the beauty of Biml. It's really fast, and you have to find projects that lend itself to Biml. But what it would end up doing is it would end up creating these, either creating or overriding the packages in a SSIS project. So rather than me, overriding those or doing something in Visual Studio to update. Remember, I was making a change by like opening an execute SQL task and clicking OK, and that I did that so that I could trigger the build on check-in. It would be the same sort of thing, except I wouldn't have to do that. I just have to rebuild the files, the SSIS package files from using Biml, and that would be a change. So if I save those and then check them in, it should work just like it did here for when I made the changes that did that. The reason I brought up the free version is the next version up is Biml Studio, and it has some interesting options, interesting features that you can't do in the free version. One of them is you can run from the command line. And, now that you mention it, I'll try and work that out where I can show that, and even using the for pay product. At least I'll blog about it, where you can run the Biml compiler. It's a file named bimlc.exe. And you can pass it in basically a script that you tell Biml what you want it to do and how you want it to do the builds. I've already got a post on using PowerShell for command line integration with Azure DevOps and in a Git project. I did that, wrote that one last month. So you can look that up at andyleonard.blog. To me, it doesn't seem like a huge leap to tie those together, or at least chain them, so that I could say, check in this project, or do a commit and push on this project once I've done that. One last thing, Biml Studio allows you to integrate with source control, and you can save your Biml as well. And you're doing that with Biml Express. But they're just files in a miscellaneous folder.
Makes sense. Have you tried DevOps on other cloud providers? Are they comparable?
I have not tried them. I can't answer. I got in way early with TFS. I may have actually published the first chapter in a book about Team Foundation Server, and it was right after, it was that SSIS 2005 book where there were 10 of us on the cover. I wrote a chapter on it then. It's always been a thing with me, because I got into what we now call DevOps test-driven development, and source control. I got into that even my pre.NET days back when I was in MCSD. And when I jumped the fence over into, I started in reporting on data and in a data warehouse project. And I was disappointed that I wasn't able to do more of the same sorts of stuff I was able to do before that. I once tried to put I can't remember what I was doing exactly, but I was trying to source control a database in Visual Source Save. And I don't remember all of the moving parts. I do know this. It broke the file. It broke VSS. And I wasn't the only one that had code in there. So the developers were not happy with me. They had to restore it back up, and they had a rollback situation as well. There's a lot of tools out there now that support that sort of stuff. But no, I've not tried any of the other DevOps engines. I don't know if I will. So far, this is doing what I want it to do. But I'm familiar with things like, I want to say Jenkins and the Atlassian suite, and see if some of my clients use that. And I've seen similar performance between the two. This is a very, very at a glance summary is I think Azure DevOps is still playing catch up. And I remember, so Redgate's they have some plugins for like Octopus Deploy and stuff like that. Again, I haven't done enough with it to even give you any kind of valid opinion of a comparison. I'm aware of their existence, and that's about it.
Got a comment that Jenkins is still ahead, so yeah.
Okay, yeah, that does surprise me. I co-presented at the PASS Summit in 2019 with two young ladies from Teach for America out of Manhattan, and they I was a client to help them. They were one of my clients, rather. I helped them with some SSIS stuff, but we continued working together after that, and we were going back and forth between, okay, how would we use SSIS with Jenkins, and that's what they were doing. They had Bitbucket and Jenkins, and I forget what else, but they talked about that, and that presentation is actually available on my blog and also in YouTube. If you go look it up, they were using containers. That was the big thing, using Azure containers to test SSIS, and that just boggles my mind. That's how they were doing it. I've written some about that because I figured out how to do it as well. But about 90% of what I learned was in working with them on doing this, and I was so proud of them. They did a great job in their very first presentation at the PASS Summit.
Well, great. I think that wraps up all of the questions we have in chat here.
Awesome. Well, if anybody has any other questions, or if maybe someone's watching the recording, I left my email address up here. Ping me, and I'll either get you an answer, or I'll find somebody who can get you an answer. I am a product of being community taught. I used to say self-taught, but I realized that just wasn't true. And if you're listening to me talk about this and go, oh my gosh, Andy knows all this really, really cool stuff, it's worth $1 million. It's not. You have engineer's disease. I know, because I suffer from it. If I don't know something, it's worth $1 million. If I know it, it's worth like a half cent. So that's just how we think. I bet you're the same way, Kevin.
Pretty much.
It's part of the chase, right? You're trying to figure out the cool things and overcome the obstacles. So I love that. I love that feeling when it starts to work. That's an awesome feeling. Thanks again, Kevin, for putting this together. And I'm really honored that you selected me and allowed me this honor of presenting. Thank you, brother.
Of course. Thank you very much. So we're going to move to another intermission. This will last for 10 minutes, and then we'll kick off the next session, which is actually all about Elasticsearch. So as I go to intermission, the stream will stop for about 30 seconds. Don't panic. It won't be the end of the world. It will start back up very shortly thereafter, and that way I'll have a nice video clip where I'll be able to put it up on YouTube afterward. So everybody hang in there, and we'll see you on the other side.